What's up, guys? Legacy back with episode 6 of The Climb, and today my special guest is Matt NiteLite Jones. Say what's up to everyone.
Hey there, guys. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I'm really excited to have you on the show. So as we usually do, as the first question, tell me about your journey in esports and where did you come from and how did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, I'm currently the director of esports for Tribe Gaming, which is a mobile-only North American esports organization. In terms of my path to get here, though, it started about 4.5 years ago, basically at the beginning of 2016 when Clash Royale came out. When Clash Royale came out, I'd experienced some Supercell games in the past, but had never really gone into them. With it, I just got hooked instantly, and I was grinding it, playing it a ton. I knew I would never be a pro player. I knew that from the very beginning. I sort of, in general, aspire to be slightly above average, and beyond that, I'm perfectly happy. But what I really got hooked with was the community side of mobile gaming, in particular with Supercell games, which allows a much more sort of global approach than anything else. Because of no server restrictions, you end up interacting with people from all over the world, making friends from all over the world. So I got really involved with helping to establish in-game clans, and one of the top in-game clans in the world early on within Clash Royale. And from that, it sort of snowballed into me starting to build some of the first competitive teams and most successful competitive teams in Clash Royale through the beginning of 2016 and through global launch. And then as 2016 was closing out, that's when Clash Royale first really started to be talked about in a true esports context. And when that was happening, I had, at the time, I'd sort of just been running my own in-game clans that were up there on the leaderboards, like top 10 in the world. And Nova Esports brought me on board to help build out their first professional team, which was one of the first true professional teams in Clash Royale. The only other one at the time was Mastery GG, which was started by Mastery Matt, or now called Mobile Matt.
Yeah, Mobile Matt.
Yeah, definitely. So at the time, we built out a team, myself and someone named Trevor, who was sort of alongside me at the time for Nova. And we ended up being really successful with that team. So we signed about 9 players at the beginning of the year, and then continued to sign some more throughout 2017. And by the end of 2017, at the Clash Royale World Finals, 9 out of 16 of the players were from Nova.
Wow.
So huge representation, really sort of where part of it was luck, part of it was really doing our research early on, taking the right bets on the right players and helping them to develop. But through that year of 2017, it was really sort of a trial by fire. I was figuring everything out on my own for the most part. I'd never really done anything in esports other than sort of my own research. And it was sort of figuring things out as I went. And given that we were successful with that Clash Royale team, I was thankfully given the opportunity to build out more of Nova's competitive teams. And so we expanded into other games like Critical Ops, like Vainglory, and then kept going from there to PUBG Mobile, Clash of Clans, and kept building out. And so thankfully, as I was doing that, because it really was sort of just learning as I was going, I was able to wear a ton of different hats and get a ton of experience across the board in esports. So everything from developing our initial contracts that we were working with for players, to building out all of our esports infrastructure, coaching staff, sort of across the board. I was really lucky to have that opportunity to learn so quickly with it. And that's something I'm really thankful to Nova for. And so I started off just managing North American esports for Nova. Then I expanded out from there to managing all of their Western esports operations, so North America, South America, and Europe. And we went on to be really successful. We won back-to-back Clash Royale World Championships. We won numerous regional championships in Europe and North America and South America in games like Arena of Valor. And then...
So I'm a big fan of Arena of Valor.
Yeah, I am too. I love Arena of Valor, and it's unfortunate it never really took off in the West like it has in Asia, especially with Honor of Kings being the sort of Asian version of it, and it being absolutely massive there. At one point, I actually had the chance to, so I led Nova's process in becoming involved in KRKPL, which is the Korean King Pro League.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so for that was something where It's essentially the foreign league for the King Pro League, which most people in the West have never heard of, but is really one of the biggest esports leagues in the world that sells out massive stadiums.
Massive viewership. Stage shows similar to like League of Legends Worlds. It's phenomenal. I try and watch as many of those events as I can on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and so many people here have no idea what goes on with it.
True. All right, go on. Sorry.
No. But I was just gonna say it's really I think Sweej or Jeff Chow is a big advocate of it, of learning from Asia and what they're doing there, because mobile is so far ahead there, and as if anything, the predominant esport when compared to the West, where it's really still in its infancy and trying to establish itself.
Absolutely, 100%.
So in August of 2019, I left Nova and I came on board with Tribe as their director of esports in order to expand out a lot of their operations, build out some of that infrastructure that I had done at Nova, expand out some of the titles they were involved with, and really sort of just try to take their esports operations to the next level. And that's what I've been working on for the past year or so, and we're seeing some great results, and we have some great things coming this year.
That's amazing. You have so much experience behind the scenes, building out infrastructure, contracts, developing teams and stuff. And now you're taking that to Tribe, which in NA is a huge, well-known name, and I'm sure globally in mobile titles as well. So why has and how has Tribe continually been able to push and pursue the mobile scene?
I think the thing with Tribe is it's mobile only. And that really matters because it means that what we're doing with our players, what we're doing with our content creators is our number one priority with everything we're doing in mobile. Some of these other orgs or these tier one orgs who are sort of dipping their toe in the water with mobile, they do care, and a lot of them are supporting their players well. But at the end of the day, it's not first, second, or third on the list. It's all the way down at the bottom of the list often in terms of priorities. And I think that's shown in sort of how they promote their mobile players, the kind of resources they devote to them. Whereas with Tribe, because we are mobile only, it means we can really try to own that niche. And it means we can, if we have a Clash Royale team, that is our number one priority with what we're doing. And so we can devote the kind of resources that mobile deserves because we believe so fully in what mobile can accomplish, in the accessibility that it allows, and just where it can go overall. And then beyond that too, we've had a big focus on content from the very beginning, which is really driven by our two founders. So our founders are Chief Pat, who I think a lot of people have heard of in mobile. He was one of the first mobile content creators, one of the biggest ones, started all the way back in 2013, I think, and has sort of been a huge advocate of mobile all the way through. And then Don John, who does sort of some of more of the esports operations side, who is started off as a content creator himself in the German market, then transitioned to be on the ground floor for Vainglory and all different other kinds of operations in mobile. So everyone here has a background in mobile, loves it, and has been sort of at the core of a specific area of mobile since the very beginning and got their start there. So we all sort of have these individual experiences that we can bring together, but that all point in the same direction for mobile, which is that we believe it will be not just sort of competing with the top titles in esports, but will overtake them at some point, as we've seen in Asia, as we're seeing in places like South America.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. You mentioned other tier one orgs. There's many of them, and you've seen them dip into PUBG Mobile and other games like that. I like the fact that you guys are mobile centric and mobile only. I think that's a big deal, and I like that you guys focus on content creation as well. But what other kind of things do you think separate you from maybe some of the other mobile orgs in the community, or even the tier one orgs? You got the Fanatics coming into the India region. Like, what separates you guys from the rest of them, from maybe a perspective of someone who doesn't know who Tribe is?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because it's one thing to say we're mobile only, but at the end of the day, other than saying it just means we're focused on it more, what does that actually translate into? And for us, that's about being really hands-on. And because we all come from this mobile space, we have this different expertise that we can be lending to players. So a great example of that, I think, is if we take, so let's say some of our Brawl Stars players, Brawl Stars team. On the competitive side, I try to be really hands-on. as esports director. So I'll go in, I'll have conversations, and I'll try to work with players and our coaches directly in terms of what they can be improving on, where they need to be going, goal setting, making sure that we have good feedback loops in terms of, okay, this is what's going right, this is what's going wrong, this is how we're going to improve that, what tools do we need to give you? Any game we're involved in, I will always play to a level where I can have an intelligent conversation about the game. And I'm never going to be the expert in the room. These players are always going to be better than me, but my goal is to have enough knowledge, not that I can be giving the answers, but that I can be asking the right questions.
I like that.
And then beyond that, we always try to bring coaching staff in who can be doing that similarly, be with them day to day, and who can sort of act for a filter even of the questions I have. So often I'll run it through them, they'll filter out the stupid ones, and then pass that along to players and sort of act from there.
Okay.
But that's sort of that philosophy of asking the right questions. That's sort of a philosophy that's across the board within Tribe. We like to give each other the space to work and to succeed and sometimes fail, but learn from it. As an example of that, with Pat, for example, as I've come on board and looked to do different things within esports, I don't think he's ever said no to me at the end of the day. And the reason for that is they try to give space, or Tribe tries to give space to the people that are really on the ground floor to operate and to be successful. And sometimes that means that you may fail. Sometimes if you're given enough rope, you'll hang yourself with it. But that's important for the learning process and for the growth process.
That's beautiful. I love that. That gives you that opportunity to learn from your mistakes, but also look at why you guys didn't succeed in that and then improve on it the next time. That's something that I find rare. I've been around since 2016, but not at the level that you have, and I feel like that's probably one of the best ways I've heard to operate, where you give them the opportunity to succeed. So moving on to my next question here, as the scene matures, and obviously now you've seen it grow massively over the last four years plus, what type of infrastructure would you like to see within mobile gaming and mobile esports, and how would you guys like to achieve as within Tribe? Like, what would you guys do to make sure that that's the proper etiquette, or how the scene matures?
I think one of the things that's really holding mobile back at the moment is that a lot of scenes sort of operate on an ad hoc basis, or as a fly by the seat of their pants. And what I mean by that is you might get plans for what the events will be or what the leagues will be a month from now or a few months from now. But it's very rare that, here's a 3-year timeline. Here's a 3-year growth plan from a developer. And when there isn't long-term planning, when you don't know what long-term outcomes are, it's hard to justify the amount of investment that you need for an esports scene to be successful. So you see T1 orgs coming in a lot and investing in mobile and then dropping out a few months later. And that's at times because they just don't know what's coming. And so they like what mobile is right now, but their philosophy is, hey, we're not really sure what's going to happen here. We don't know if it's going to be successful or not because it hasn't been articulated to us well enough. We're just going to sit back. If it becomes big, we'll jump in at that point. We know we can. We have enough brand recognition. So why get in now? Let's just wait. And that waiting game is always going to happen unless there are long-term promises and outcomes.
So
a good example of that is, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to, you might probably be leading on to what I was going to say. I was going to say, so you think maybe franchising would solidify like a reason for orgs to stay, tier 1 orgs to stay within a game?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've seen that with Vainglory and with Clash Royale League, where you have a wide variety of big orgs coming and getting involved. And you see them generally sticking with it. Some do leave. And usually when they do leave, it's because there isn't necessarily a long-term plan enough for growth. And what they're doing at the moment might be great, but they're looking at where can mobile go from here? And they need to see that that's being driven by league operators, by developers, by the people involved in the community. And unless everyone is really on the same page with that, and there's good communications about what the future looks like, it's hard to justify increased investment. And you need that increased investment in order to make sure that there's good visibility for the top tier leagues. And then From that, everything trickles down to where if there's good top tier leagues, it makes sense to fill in below that with a good semi-pro scene in order to recruit talent and build talent. And then it makes sense to fill in below that with a good community grassroots scene. Mm-hmm. So it really just, I think it is led by the top, which at the end of the day, largely comes down to developers and tournament operators.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I like the different type of tiers that you brought into there. Like you have the main and then the semi-pro and the grassroots. I think that shows me that you think beyond, and I love the idea of you saying, hey, the developers really need to have like some type of elongated schedule, not like almost like a content schedule, but like a release schedule to give these top orgs and teams and players like knowledge of like, hey, here's what's coming. Otherwise, like you said, top orgs will come in and then dip out because they just don't know. It's still kind of like the wild west. So I definitely think that having that infrastructure will help the sustainability of mobile. Like I think you were talking about like the KPL and stuff in Asia. I'm pretty sure they have something similar to what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they definitely do. And in fairness to developers, a lot of this is uncharted territory. Even for traditional leagues, even if you look at traditional esports, there are still huge questions about what can be successful there. For every person that says the Overwatch League or Call of Duty League are going to be successful and are worth the $30 million buy-ins, there's another person that is just as experienced in esports that will say, this is crazy, this is not worth it, this is going to flop. So even at that highest level, there's no one really knows what the best approach is here. And that becomes especially challenging for these mobile developers where often they haven't touched esports before and they're figuring it out as they go along. And so in fairness, part of it is that they're still learning and they're trying to grow and figure out what works for them and what works and sort of jives with their objectives.
Mm-hmm. And then you had mentioned visibility and maintaining that visibility. And speaking of visibility, recently you guys picked up two of the biggest mobile content creators in COD Mobile, if not the two biggest, Hawksnest and Ferg. I'd like to hear your thoughts on how that process went, how everything's going with them. Right now, they are massive content creators on YouTube. So what was that like for you guys? Was it stressful? Was it easy? Like, was the conversation like, hey, do you guys want to join Tribe? And what are your guys' plans with them for content in the future?
Mm-hmm. So this is something that we've largely been super self-focused up until now. So that means Clash of Clans, Clash Royale, and Brawl Stars has largely been our focus, and that's because they've had really vibrant communities. They were really the only mobile titles that were competitive and sustainable in the long term. There were games like Arena of Valor, games like Vainglory, but they haven't had the lifespans that Supercell games have had. Really only recently have we started seeing the PUBG mobiles and the COD mobiles of the world that are providing AAA core gaming experiences within a mobile setting. And so with that, we really felt that we needed to be expanding our offering. We needed to be expanding our creators. And like you mentioned, Ferg and Hawksnest are two people that have been doing incredibly well, pulling in huge numbers, awesome guys, really passionate about mobile, really passionate not just about content, but competing. And so they were on our radar from the very beginning. And with them, it was, as with many of these things, with players or creators, it's a long process of helping to understand each other's goals and what each other is looking for. And at the end of the day, we figured out that we really were looking to do the same thing, which is grow mobile, make mobile sort of cool, make mobile just as big as traditional esports. And part of how that would work is by really partnering to build content that neither of us could do alone, but which we could do together. So with that, we've already talked about this publicly a bit, moving them both into a team house in Austin to be able to build content there. Hopefully we get other creators on board as well, and we can be facilitating some high production value FPS content and other gaming content with having everyone under one roof, close to our headquarters. And so we're really just trying to sort of level up mobile, take it to the next level, and facilitate content that is really sort of greater than the sum of its parts.
Absolutely. So you guys would be one of the only other organizations that give that opportunity to the creators. I believe Space Station does that as well with some of their people. That has to be a massive investment, and behind the scenes, like, I'm sure there was a lot of detailed work that goes into that. Do you feel like that is a high risk for you guys to take, or do you think the reward is outweighs the risk?
I think it comes down to how much trust do you have in the people involved with it. And that may sound like sort of a vague answer, but what it really is do we trust that these guys are going to keep grinding, that they're going to keep working hard, putting out great content? And then on the other side, do we trust that operationally we can work with them to sell against that content, to bring in partners that want to work with us for the content we can be creating? And if both of those are yeses, which for us they are, then to us it's a no-brainer to do. And especially with bringing in a recent round of funding for us. We just raised over $1 million of seed funding with Gordon Hayward, as well as Cesaro participating. These are the kinds of things that we want to be doing, that we want to be building with. And yeah, in some ways, anything like this is a bit of a risk, but we have enough trust in the creators and what they are going to be doing, and in the people that we have on board, that we think we're going to be successful with it, and that we should be able to put out some great stuff for people to consume and hopefully give everyone involved great experiences.
That's amazing. I'm really excited to see some of the content, and also congratulations on the seed funding. That's also amazing. That's got to be some kind of a milestone for mobile. For a mobile org to put something like that out there, getting the seed funding or round funding. So that's pretty cool. So congratulations to you guys on that. And you briefly touched on this earlier when you were talking about looking at Hawks and other games and stuff. But when you guys are scouting for potential teams or talent, content creators, streamers, or even games to move into, what are kind of the characteristics you guys look for specifically?
So if you had asked me this question, let's say 2 or 3 years ago, closer to when I was building teams around like 2017, 2018, my answer would have been very different. And I think back then I was a bit more optimistic about how some things worked. And now I'm a bit more jaded in some ways. And what I mean by that is my philosophy early on in esports is if you work hard enough, if you're grinding, if you're putting the time in, you're going to be successful, at least on a player side. And that sort of changed for me somewhat. Just in the way, if you look at traditional sports, there are limitations based on the raw talent someone has. And just like people have raw talent for traditional sports, whether that's being tall enough to play in the NBA or athletic enough or whatever it may be, there's sort of a bottom, there's a floor, and there's a ceiling to what players can accomplish within competitive contexts. And that's dictated by the raw talent that they bring in. Now, within that, where they are on that spectrum is dictated by the work. You can't just be talented, put in no work, and be super successful. But at the same time, even if you're the hardest working guy out there, if your talent is limiting you, then you may end up struggling. And that's a really unfortunate thing. And it's something that you generally aren't going to hear much. Most people are going to say, yeah, if you work hard, you're going to get there. What I will say is people need to understand their strengths. So me, for example, I was grinding Clash Royale early on when it came out. I knew I was never going to be a professional player. It was never in the cards for me. I don't have the reaction time for it. I don't sort of process gameplay quickly enough. And it's something that I've come to understand more and more. And so one of the first things I looked at is, hey, what is the raw talent level here? Is it high enough to justify working with? Can this guy be on a world championship team? And if we cross that barrier, then it comes to, and this is just as important, what is the character of the player? Are they someone who is going to be grinding, who's going to be grinding next to their teammates, putting the time in, who is willing to say, yeah, I screwed up here. I need to work on this and I need to improve, and isn't just going to be defensive. That's just as important as the talent, but those are both hurdles that need to be overcome with it. Then you start looking at some other things with players, like how much are they really committed to this and what are their goals? So a good example of this is we've brought on what we think will be a world championship team for Clash Royale this year in the Clash Royale League. We brought on players from all over the world. So we brought on a coach from China. We brought on 2 players from South Korea, a player from France, and a player from England. And from all different teams, had never really been on the same team together. And the starting point of that was the coach. And the thing that really sold me on this coach, he's someone I had worked with a bit previously. But the thing that really sold me was I was asking him about his goals in esports. And most people that you talk to in esports are going to say, I want to be involved in management. I want to go do this, this, and this. I want to build to this. But that wasn't his answer at all. His answer was, hey, I'm in Clash Royale right now. I want to win a world championship with a team. I want to lead a team to a world championship. Yeah, there's tons of other things I want to do, but I'm not done here until I win a world championship. And until then, that's all I'm focused on. And to me, that spoke volumes. To me, that was a moment where I could have just sat my pen down and said, okay, you've got the job. Because displaying that level of singular focus is incredibly, incredibly valuable. And when I see that with players, that speaks volumes. And that's someone that I want to work with immediately. So having those goals, having that focus, understanding what someone is working towards, and then having the talent and the character to back it up is sort of the summation of what I look for in a player. And then beyond that too, they need to be respectful on social media. They need to have a good brand presence for themselves. Those things come after though, and those things are more controllable on our side.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like since mobile is a younger demographic and that demographic is now growing, I feel like maturity speaks volumes as well. And we are in a space that has a lot of younger kids. So is that something that you guys have to combat a lot, or do you just filter it out?
It is definitely something we need to work with. So Tribe's history was in Vainglory. It was our very first game, and actually ended up winning a world championship in that game. And we had one of the youngest players ever. I was involved with Tribe at the time, but his name was D'Enzio. I think he started playing at the age of 12 for Vainglory, which is incredibly, incredibly young, but he was super talented. And with that, someone who is on the younger side needs different support than someone who might be 23, 24 and is playing. And there's different challenges that come with that. You need to make sure their parents are on board. You need to make sure they understand exactly how their kids are being taken care of. I've had conversations with parents where it's, hey, like, are you looking to kidnap my kid right now? You're saying you want to fly him to the other side of the world. I know he plays games. I had no idea what's going on here. So those are conversations that need to happen. And it's really important that there is a good understanding within the family of sort of what exactly these players are working towards and the potential they have. Then beyond that too, it's really important that we're setting expectations for those younger players, that they understand that when they're making a commitment, if they're 10 minutes late to a practice, that's not just wasting 10 minutes, that's wasting 10 minutes across 6 different people. And so understanding what commitments look like and what it looks like to really show up, to be focused, and to be working towards something with a group of people. And that's something that some younger players just don't get and need to age up with and sort of grow into. And it's something that some younger players are better than the 20-year-olds at. It's frankly true. Something that there is some relation to age, but there's plenty of young players out there that are far more mature than the older ones I work with.
I can agree on all the spectrums that you just talked about there. We could go on for hours about this, but I don't want to take that much more of your time. So we're going to go on to our fun question here. If you could be a pro player, and I know you said that earlier, like you knew you were never going to make it in Clash Royale, but theoretically, if you could be a pro player or a big content creator or streamer, which one would you rather be and why?
There is a part of me that loves competing, just sort of loves the thrill of it. I come from a traditional sports background, but realistically a content creator. And the reason for that is pro player careers are short-lived. If you're lucky, maybe you're going for 5 or 6 years. Realistically, often they're shorter than that. It's easy to burn out. Being a content creator, though, is something where if you're successful with it, which it's very difficult to be successful with. You can't just post a video and have it take off. There's guys who have grinded for years and years to get to where they are. But being a content creator, if you are able to be successful, it's something that can be a long-term career for you, that you can pivot in different directions, that you can use to pursue other interests. And it's something that can be sustainable. Versus realistically, a pro player, one of the first conversations I have with them is, hey, do you want to be doing content? How can we support you in doing content? Because this is important for your longevity. So realistically, most people who are pro players, at some point they look to transition towards content creation or working in sort of the management or business side of esports anyways.
Okay.
So content creation is definitely where I would go.
Absolutely. So is there anything that you wanted to touch on that we might not have talked about, or want to give anything else that would be valuable to the listeners? You can go ahead and do that now.
Not much at the moment. Just I would say that I think if you have any question of where mobile is going to go, I mentioned this at the beginning, but look towards the East. Look at what's happening there. It is incredibly pervasive. It is leading every metric in the East, in Asia. It is hugely expanding across the board, and there's a ton of reasons for that. But at the end of the day, it's just as simple as, hey, do you want to go and buy a $2,000 gaming rig to be able to compete in this game? Or do you want to pull your phone out of your pocket that you have anyways and be able to play at the top level and play for millions of dollars potentially in some of these tournaments?
Absolutely.
And it's sort of a question that's that simple. It's the incredible accessibility of it, that anyone can access it, no matter your background. If you've got a phone in your pocket, you can be playing, provided you don't have like a Nokia flip phone. But no hate on Nokia flip phones, but you might struggle with that one.
Playing Snake.
But beyond that, I truly believe in mobile. We've gone all in on it, and we're going to keep supporting it in every way that we can. And with that, I really appreciate you having people on to talk about mobile and have these conversations. I think it's a really valuable resource.
I appreciate you coming on. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast and watching the Climb episode 6 with Matt NiteLite Jones at NiteLite on Twitter. Thank you for watching, and I'm Legacy saying peace.